In the dark depths beneath the earth lies a realm untouched by time. A place where shadows whisper the memories of the dead, where no mortal dares to tread, and none ever return. They called it the Underworld, a kingdom beyond life itself, ruled by a god whose name few dared to speak aloud. To the Greeks, he was not merely a figure of fear, he was inevitability. He was the end that comes for all. He was Hades, the unseen one. Long before men walked the earth, there was war among the gods, the great Titanomachy, a battle that tore the heavens apart. When the Titans fell, three brothers stood victorious: Zeus, who claimed the skies; Poseidon, who took the seas; and Hades, who drew the darkest lot, the realm beneath. But this was no punishment. It was destiny. While Zeus ruled with thunder and Poseidon with waves, Hades became the keeper of something far greater, the balance between life and death itself. Yet through the ages, mortals feared him. They whispered his name only in secret, believing that to call upon Hades was to invite death itself. But was he truly the monster they imagined? Or simply the most misunderstood god in all of Greek mythology? Today, we descend into his world, a journey through shadow, myth, and truth. This is the realm of Hades. Long before Olympus rose into the heavens, before mortals spoke the names of gods, there was only the endless void, chaos. From that void, creation unfolded like the breath of a sleeping giant. Gaia, the earth, was born, vast, fertile, and eternal. And from her came Uranus, the sky, her equal and her mate. Together, they birthed a race of mighty beings known as the Titans, colossal entities who ruled before the age of men, before the light of Zeus. Among these Titans were Kronos and Rhea, two of the most powerful. Their union would shape the destiny of all gods to come, for from their bloodline would rise the rulers of Olympus and the keeper of the underworld. But power, as always, breeds fear. Kronos, after overthrowing his own father Uranus, learned of a prophecy that one day, one of his own children would rise up and destroy him, just as he had done to his father. Terrified of repeating history, Kronos did something monstrous. Each time Rhea bore a child, he swallowed it whole. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, all consumed, trapped in the endless dark of their father's stomach, unborn gods imprisoned in a living tomb. Imagine it, silence, timeless, suffocating silence. That was where Hades first existed, not in the light of Olympus but in eternal shadow. He was born into darkness long before he ever ruled it. But Rhea, heartbroken and desperate, could not bear to lose another child. When her sixth child was born, she tricked Kronos. Instead of the newborn, she wrapped a stone in swaddling cloth and gave it to her husband to swallow. Meanwhile, she hid her true son, Zeus, on the island of Crete, where he was raised in secret by nymphs and fed the milk of the divine goat Amalthea. Years passed, and Zeus grew strong. He learned the truth of his father's cruelty, and vowed to set his siblings free. With the help of the goddess Metis, Zeus devised a cunning plan. He offered Kronos a potion that forced the Titan to vomit up all the children he had devoured. One by one, the gods emerged, reborn into the world. From the darkness of their father's belly, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon rose once again. No longer helpless infants, but divine beings with the power of immortality burning in their veins. Reunited at last, they joined Zeus in rebellion against the Titans. And so began the Titanomachy, the greatest war the cosmos had ever seen. At last, the war reached its climax. Zeus hurled his thunderbolts with divine fury, shattering Mount Othries, the stronghold of the Titans. Poseidon drowned their armies beneath waves of endless storm, and Hades struck fear into the hearts of the enemy, breaking their will from within. Defeated, the Titans were cast down into Tartarus, the deepest abyss beneath the world, bound in chains for eternity. The world was free, but forever changed, for in victory, the brothers now held the power to shape reality itself. When the dust of war settled, the three brothers, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, stood together upon the ruins of the old world. They had destroyed the Titans and inherited the universe. But who would rule it? The brothers agreed that fate should decide. They drew lots to divide the cosmos, not by desire but by destiny. Zeus drew the heavens, becoming the king of gods and ruler of the skies. Poseidon drew the seas, the endless realm of waves and storms. Hades drew the underworld, the hidden realm beneath the earth, the kingdom of shadows and souls. No celebration followed, no triumph. For Hades, his domain was silent and cold, unseen by the living, untouched by sunlight. But it was his, and his alone. And unlike his brothers, he did not resist his fate. He accepted it with quiet resolve. Many mortals believed that Hades was cursed, punished to dwell among the dead. But in truth, his kingdom was not one of torment, it was one of order. He ruled over the natural law that binds all life, the cycle of birth, death, and renewal. Without Hades, there would be no balance, no end to make room for new beginnings. He was not the bringer of death, but its guardian. He did not cause suffering, he ensured that all things returned to where they belonged. The Greeks called him Pluton, meaning the wealth giver, for all things buried in the earth, gold, silver, and even the seeds that grow, were under his dominion. His realm, though dark, was fertile with meaning. In the depths, life begins again. Unlike Zeus and Poseidon, Hades did not dwell among mortals. He did not seek temples or praise. He ruled from afar, in silence, for to him, power was not to be displayed, but to be maintained. The Greeks often avoided saying his name aloud, calling him instead Eubuleus, the good counselor, or the invisible one. Not out of hatred, but out of respect. Because to speak his name was to acknowledge the one truth that no mortal could escape. Hades represented what all humans feared, the end, but he was also the assurance that there was something beyond it. He was the keeper of order in a world that feared chaos. And though his realm was filled with shadows, it was not evil. It was simply the other half of existence. In a world born from chaos and fire, Hades stood apart. He did not seek the sky like Zeus, nor the waves like Poseidon. His was a quieter kind of dominion, eternal, unyielding, unseen. He was the god of boundaries, between life and death, between fear and understanding. And while his brothers ruled with thunder and storm, Hades ruled with silence. Because sometimes, the greatest power lies not in what is seen, but in what is inevitable. Beneath the surface of the mortal world lies a realm untouched by sunlight, a kingdom of silence, mystery, and eternal shadow. It is not a place of fire or torment, but of stillness. A mirror to the living world above, where every soul finds its final home. This is the Underworld, the domain of Hades, the unseen god. And though poets and philosophers tried for centuries to describe it, few mortals ever truly understood its nature. It was not chaos. It was order, cold, perfect, and inevitable. Let us descend. The entrance, the threshold of shadows. They say the entrance to the underworld could be found in many places, hidden among deep caves, dark chasms, and the edges of the known world. To the Greeks, such gateways were sacred, the thin places where the veil between life and death grew thin. One of the most famous was said to lie in Epirus at the mouth of the Acheron River, where ancient priests once guided souls through rituals of passage. Others claimed that dark fissures beneath volcanoes, or the mysterious caves of Tainarin in Sparta, opened into Hades' realm. But no matter where the journey began, all paths led downward, into a silence so complete, it seemed to swallow the world itself. At this threshold stood Hermes Psychopompos, the messenger god and guide of souls. He was the only Olympian allowed to move freely between the living and the dead. With his winged sandals and golden staff, Hermes led the newly departed down winding paths, whispering comfort to their fading memories. He was not their judge, nor their savior, only their escort, guiding them to what awaited. When the last trace of mortal breath was gone, the journey truly began. The rivers of the dead. The underworld was a vast and layered realm, and at its heart flowed 5 great rivers, each one representing a different truth of death. Together, they formed the boundaries, the veins, and the lifeblood of Hades' kingdom. The first was the Styx, the river of hatred and unbreakable oaths. Its waters were black as night, shimmering faintly with the reflection of lost souls. Even the gods feared to swear falsely upon it, for to break an oath sworn by the Styx was to lose one's immortality. The Styx was sacred, its current the very essence of divine law. It was said that Hades himself drew strength from it, as if his authority was bound to its eternal flow. The second river was Acheron, the river of pain. It was upon this river that the souls of the dead first arrived, carried by Hermes to their crossing. The waters moaned with the grief of humanity, the cries of the dying, the regrets of the lost. It was said that if you listened closely, you could still hear the echoes of voices long gone. The third was Lethe, the river of forgetfulness. Its waters shimmered pale and still, unlike the others. Here, the souls of the dead drank deeply, erasing every memory of their former life. Names, faces, loves, and losses, all gone. Only then could they find peace. But for some, like the souls chosen for reincarnation, forgetting was mercy, the gift of beginning again. The fourth was Phlegethon, the river of fire. It flowed with molten flame, yet burned nothing. It symbolized purification, the destruction of corruption and the cleansing of the soul. Philosophers later imagined it as the path through which impure spirits must pass before entering the realm beyond. And the fifth was Cocytus, the river of wailing. It was the most haunting of all, a cold, misty current surrounded by eternal weeping. Here wandered those who could not accept their fate, the restless, the mourners, and the lost. Their cries echoed through eternity, a reminder that even in death, sorrow endures. These 5 rivers wove through the underworld like threads of fate, their currents crossing, dividing, and reuniting again, each one shaping the journey of every soul. Charon, the ferryman of the dead. Beyond the banks of the Styx stood a small, ancient dock. And there, in the eternal twilight, waited Charon, the ferryman. He was an old, silent figure, cloaked in rags, his face hidden beneath a shadowed hood. His hands, calloused and cold, gripped the oar of a small boat that rocked gently on the dark waters. Charon asked for no words, only payment. A single coin, placed beneath the tongue or on the eyes of the deceased before burial. Those who could pay were ferried across in solemn silence. Those who could not, were left to wander the shore of the Styx for 100 years, trapped between worlds. To the living, this ritual, the placing of the coin, was sacred. It was not merely a fare for passage, but a final act of respect, the acceptance that death is a journey, not an end. As the boat drifted across the black water, the world of the living faded behind, until nothing remained but shadow. Cerberus, the guardian of the gate. On the far side of the Styx stood the gates of the underworld, immense, forged of obsidian and bronze. And guarding them was the most fearsome creature ever born of the dark, Cerberus, the 3-headed hound of Hades. Each of his heads watched a different direction, one for the dead entering, one for the living who dared to come, and one for those who sought to escape. His eyes burned with an unearthly glow, and his growl rumbled like thunder through the caverns. Yet Cerberus was no monster of cruelty, he was loyalty incarnate. His purpose was not to torment, but to guard. For no soul, once entered, could leave without the will of Hades. It was said that even the bravest heroes trembled before him, except for one, Heracles, who, through strength and divine favor, once tamed the beast during his final labor. But even he did not harm the hound, for to strike Cerberus was to strike the law of death itself. The realms within the underworld. Beyond the gates, the underworld spread vast and endless, a landscape neither alive nor dead, illuminated by pale light that cast no shadow. It was divided into 3 great realms, each reflecting the deeds of a mortal life. The asphodel meadows lay at the center, an expanse of ghostly fields, silent and gray, where ordinary souls wandered without memory or purpose. Neither punished nor rewarded, they simply existed, forever repeating the motions of their former lives, whispering to one another in voices soft as wind. To mortals, this was the truest image of death. Not pain, not joy, but eternal stillness. But for a few, there was light beyond the shadows. The Elysian Fields, or Elysium, stretched at the edge of the underworld, a paradise of green meadows, clear skies, and golden light. Here dwelled the heroes, poets, and the blessed, those who lived with honor or were chosen by the gods. It was said that in Elysium, music never ceased, and the air itself shimmered with peace. Some believed that after living 3 righteous lives, a soul could transcend even Elysium, escaping the cycle of death forever, to dwell among the stars. And then, there was Tartarus, the deepest abyss, where the wicked and the monsters were cast. It was not merely a place of punishment, but a prison, a realm beneath even Hades' dominion. Here, the titans who defied the Olympians were chained in endless torment, their cries echoing through the chasms. Mortals who committed unforgivable crimes, betrayers, oath-breakers, tyrants, suffered fates fit for their sins. Each corner of Tartarus reflected divine justice, not vengeance but balance. Even here, Hades ruled not with malice but with precision. Every soul was where it belonged. Though the underworld was filled with countless souls, it was never chaotic. There was order in the stillness, the calm of a world without time. Here, no sun rose, no moon fell. The only rhythm was the beating of eternity itself. Some say that in rare moments, Hades would walk among the souls, silent and watchful, his presence alone commanding reverence. He did not punish, nor did he comfort, he simply was. A god not of cruelty, but of consequence. For every beginning, there must be an end, and in that end, there is peace. The underworld was not a place of horror, as later ages imagined. It was the mirror of life, a realm that reminded mortals of their fragility and their truth. Every river, every whisper, every wandering soul, all part of the same story. To enter the realm of Hades was to pass beyond fear, beyond memory, beyond the world itself. It was not hell, it was simply forever. In the grand tapestry of Greek mythology, few names inspire such quiet dread as Hades. Even among the gods of Olympus, his presence was shadowed in reverence and caution. Mortals whispered his name only when absolutely necessary, and even then, they preferred euphemisms. They called him Pluton, the wealth giver, hoping to curry favor or avoid his attention altogether. To the ancient Greeks, speaking his true name was like knocking on the door of death itself. But contrary to modern perception, Hades was never evil. He was not the Greek equivalent of Satan. He did not tempt mortals, wage war against heaven, or take pleasure in suffering. In truth, Hades was one of the most impartial and disciplined gods of all, a ruler of order, balance, and unyielding justice. The Silent King, Hades ruled his domain not with cruelty, but with solemn duty. His kingdom was vast and eternal, filled with countless souls, yet he did not gloat over his dominion. He did not hunger for more, he simply maintained the natural order. Life above, death below, a cycle that could not be broken. Unlike Zeus, whose temper often sparked chaos among gods and men, or Poseidon, whose storms could destroy fleets in moments, Hades was composed. He rarely left the underworld, and when he did, the earth itself trembled, not because of rage, but because his presence disrupted the boundary between life and death. He was the unseen constant, the inevitable end of all stories. The great misunderstanding. In later eras, as cultures changed and religions evolved, many began to conflate Hades with darkness itself. The Christian world, with its clear distinction between heaven and hell, retroactively cast Hades as a demonic figure, an infernal king of punishment. But the Greeks never saw him that way. To them, Hades was not malevolent, he was necessary. Death, in their view, was not the enemy of life, but its mirror. Without the shadow of the end, existence would have no meaning. Hades embodied that inevitability, the reminder that everything born must one day return to the earth. And so, while Zeus ruled the skies with lightning and Poseidon commanded the seas with tridents of foam, Hades ruled something far more profound, the silence beyond life. Pluton, the wealth giver. The Greeks were deeply superstitious, but they were also practical. They understood that beneath the surface of the earth lay riches, veins of gold, silver, iron, and fertile soil that sustained crops and civilizations. And who, they believed, guarded those treasures? Hades. Under his epithet, Pluton, he was honored as the bringer of prosperity and abundance. The word Plutos means wealth, not just material, but also agricultural and spiritual. Farmers prayed to him for fertile soil, for every seed planted in the ground was a small act of faith in rebirth, a miniature death followed by new life. In this way, Hades symbolized both decay and renewal. What dies returns to the earth, enriching it. What grows owes its life to that which has perished. It was a cosmic exchange, and Hades was its quiet overseer. Even in his grim domain, life persisted in its own way. The rivers flowed, spirits wandered, and new souls arrived each day. To the Greeks, this was not horror, it was order. A divine balance, kept steady by the god everyone feared to name. The just judge. Hades' rule was absolute, but not arbitrary. Within his realm, justice was sacred. Every soul was judged for its deeds, not by Hades himself, but by three appointed judges: Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus. Once the verdict was rendered, Hades ensured it was carried out with precision. There was no corruption in his halls, no favoritism or deceit. Kings and beggars stood equal before death. In that sense, Hades' justice was the purest kind, untainted by mortal ambition or divine pride. He was not cruel to the dead, nor did he torment them for sport. The punishments of Tartarus were reserved for those who had defied the natural order, murderers, betrayers, and the Titans themselves. For everyone else, there was peace in the asphodel meadows or bliss in the Elysian fields. Hades simply ensured that the balance remained intact. A god of boundaries. Perhaps Hades' greatest role was as a guardian of boundaries, between life and death, mortal and immortal, chaos and order. He ensured that no living soul entered his domain without permission, and that no spirit escaped once it crossed his gates. This boundary defined existence itself. The ancient Greeks feared him because he represented the limit they could not cross, the one frontier no hero, no king, no god could conquer forever. Even mighty Heracles and cunning Orpheus had to bargain and suffer to glimpse his realm. Hades' duty was not to punish, but to protect, to prevent the worlds from bleeding into one another. Without him, death would spill into life, and chaos would reign. He was, in a sense, the final warden of reality. The shadow of solitude, yet for all his strength and power, Hades was a solitary figure. Unlike the other Olympians who reveled in their temples and festivals, Hades was largely uncelebrated. No grand temples were built in his name, for people feared inviting his gaze. His altars were hidden in caves and deep underground, quiet places, far from the laughter of cities. Even among gods, he was an outsider. He did not join their feasts on Mount Olympus. He did not meddle in mortal affairs. He remained in the shadows, watching, waiting, ensuring the cycle continued. But perhaps that solitude was not punishment, perhaps it was peace. Hades had no desire for conquest, no thirst for adoration. He simply existed where he was needed most, doing the work none else would do. In a world of prideful gods, that humility made him unique. Death and renewal. In the grand cycle of existence, Hades' presence is inevitable and strangely comforting. He is the reminder that endings are not to be feared, but respected. For in every ending lies a new beginning. The Greeks saw this truth reflected in the changing of the seasons, life, death, and rebirth, symbolized through Persephone, his queen. When she descended into the underworld each year, the earth withered. When she returned, spring bloomed anew. Hades did not steal life, he merely held it in waiting. Thus, Hades became not just a god of death, but a god of transformation. Through him, mortals learned that even in the deepest shadow, there is continuity, that life and death are not enemies, but eternal partners in the dance of time. The inevitability of Hades, no one escapes him, not kings, not heroes, not even the gods. And yet, he is not to be hated for it. His touch is not malicious, it is simply what must be. Hades is inevitability personified, the end that gives life its meaning. He is the silence after the storm, the stillness after the last breath, the peace that follows chaos. In his world, everything returns to its source. The Greeks understood this. That's why they feared him, and why, deep down, they also respected him. Because in the end, Hades does not take, he receives. He is not destruction, but completion. And in the quiet halls of the underworld, where time stands still and souls find their rest, Hades sits upon his throne, calm, eternal, and just. The god everyone feared to name, yet the god who gives meaning to all life. In the golden fields of the mortal world, where the earth bloomed under the gentle touch of Demeter, the goddess of harvest, there walked her beloved daughter, Persephone. She was the very essence of youth and renewal, her laughter echoing through meadows filled with flowers. Wherever she stepped, the grass seemed greener, the petals brighter. To mortals, she was the promise of spring, a living embodiment of life itself. But even light casts a shadow. And one day, that shadow came from beneath the earth. It began on an ordinary day. Persephone wandered through a sunlit meadow with her companions, naiads and nymphs, gathering blossoms in her hands. The sky was calm, the breeze warm, and the air thick with the scent of violets. But as she reached for a peculiar flower, the narcissus, said to have been planted by Gaia herself, the ground beneath her feet began to tremble. A deep rumble echoed across the field, and from the fissure of the earth, the chariot of Hades emerged, black as night, drawn by 4 immortal horses with eyes of fire. The ground split open like a wound in the world. Before she could scream, the god of the underworld reached out and seized her. His cloak billowed like a shadow swallowing the sun. The earth closed behind them, sealing the world above from the world below. The meadow fell silent once more. Only a single flower remained, crushed where she had stood. When Demeter discovered her daughter missing, her cries echoed through heaven and earth. For 9 days and nights, she searched ceaselessly, refusing food, drink, or rest. She wandered among mortals in disguise, her divine radiance dimmed by grief. The world itself reflected her sorrow. Crops withered, trees bore no fruit, and famine began to spread. Even Zeus, lord of the skies, could not ignore the despair that consumed the earth. Without Demeter's blessing, mankind would perish, and with them, the offerings that sustained the gods. Hermes was sent to seek the truth. He descended through shadowed caverns and misty paths until he reached the halls of Hades. There he found Persephone, pale yet regal, seated beside the god of the underworld, not as a prisoner but as a queen. In the realm of death, Persephone had changed. At first, she wept endlessly, yearning for the world above, for sunlight, for her mother, for the scent of blooming fields. But Hades treated her not as a captive, but as an equal. He offered her a throne beside his own, a crown forged from onyx and gold, and a place of power in his shadowed kingdom. He spoke softly, not demanding love, but understanding. He told her of his loneliness, of how the living feared him, and even the gods shunned his name. He ruled over countless souls, yet had none to share eternity with. And so, in time, Persephone's heart began to shift. She did not love Hades as a mortal might love, but she came to understand him, his duty, his solitude, his quiet strength. In her presence, the underworld softened. Flowers began to bloom along the banks of the Styx, and the shades whispered her name in reverence. The goddess of life had brought color to the land of the dead. But Demeter's grief would not end. The earth continued to decay, and humankind teetered on the brink of extinction. At last, Zeus intervened. He sent Hermes once again, this time with a divine decree. Persephone was to be returned to her mother. When Hermes arrived, Hades did not resist. Yet before Persephone departed, he offered her a single fruit, the pomegranate, red as blood, glistening in the dim light. He said nothing more, and moved by compassion or perhaps curiosity, she ate 6 seeds. When Demeter finally embraced her daughter once more, the earth rejoiced. Flowers bloomed overnight, rivers flowed again, and harvests returned in abundance. But the joy was short-lived, for the fates had spoken. Whoever consumes food from the underworld is bound to it forever. Persephone had eaten of the pomegranate, and thus she could not remain above for all eternity. A compromise was struck. Zeus, ever the mediator, decreed that Persephone would spend part of each year with her mother and part with her husband in the underworld. When she returned to the world above, Demeter's joy would paint the earth with color, spring and summer, seasons of life and abundance. But when Persephone descended once more into the shadowed halls, Demeter's heart would ache, and the world would wither, autumn and winter, seasons of decay and silence. And so, through the love of a mother, the devotion of a husband, and the choices of a daughter, the eternal cycle of nature was born. Life and death, growth and decay, light and darkness, the endless dance of the seasons, all bound by the story of Persephone, the queen of the dead. In the centuries that followed, Persephone's image transformed. She was no longer just the innocent maiden stolen by Hades. She became the queen of the underworld, feared and revered in equal measure. She sat beside Hades, her once gentle eyes now filled with the wisdom of both life and death. Souls approached her for mercy, and she judged them with compassion, a balance to Hades' stern authority. Together, they ruled not in cruelty but in equilibrium. Under her reign, the underworld became not merely a place of endings, but of transition, where the soul shed its mortal weight and found rest. The Greeks prayed to her not to escape death, but to find peace within it. In Persephone, they saw the hope that life would always return, even after the darkest winter. The myth of Persephone is more than a tale of love and loss. It is the heart of Greek cosmology, a reminder that every joy carries sorrow, and every ending hides a beginning. Hades symbolizes permanence, inevitability, the stillness of death. Demeter represents nurture, creation, and the will to sustain life. And Persephone, caught between them, becomes the living bridge, a divine paradox. She embodies both the descent into shadow and the return to light. When she descends to the underworld, nature mourns. When she rises again, the world rejoices. It is the eternal cycle of death and rebirth, decay and renewal, a truth not only of myth but of existence itself. In every human heart lies a piece of Persephone's story. We all experience our own descents into grief, loss, and despair, moments when the world feels cold and lifeless. But just as surely, we rise again. Spring follows winter, light follows darkness. The Greeks understood this rhythm intimately. They did not fear death as annihilation, but as transformation, a return to the womb of the earth, where Hades and Persephone reign. To die was to sleep in their care, to await one's rebirth in the endless turning of the seasons. That is why the Eleusinian mysteries, secret rites devoted to Demeter and Persephone, promised initiates not immortality but peace beyond the grave. To know the story of Persephone was to know that death, too, held its share of life. In art and poetry, Persephone is often depicted standing beside Hades, one hand holding a torch, the other a pomegranate. She is neither victim nor conqueror, but balance incarnate. Together, they represent the unity of opposites, the harmony between creation and destruction, between the blooming world above and the silent realm below. Without one, the other could not exist. Even the gods needed balance. And in the love between Hades and Persephone, born of darkness, tempered by understanding, the Greeks found a reflection of that cosmic truth. Every year, as the earth warms and the first blossoms push through the soil, the Greeks would say, "Persephone rises." And when the leaves fell, and winter's chill crept in, she descends once more. Through her, they saw that no darkness lasts forever, and no life truly ends. In every seed buried in the ground, in every sunset fading into night, Persephone lives, the eternal promise that life will always find its way back to the light. When a mortal breathes their final breath, a sacred transition begins, the passage from the world of the living to the domain of the dead. The body falls silent, but the soul endures, carried by unseen forces toward the depths below. Guided by Hermes Psychopompos, the divine messenger and escort of souls, the spirit drifts through mists and shadowed caverns until it reaches the banks of the river Styx, the threshold of the underworld. There, the living world fades completely, and eternity begins. The journey to judgment. At the dark shores of the Styx, a lone figure waits, Charon, the ferryman of the dead. His hollow eyes betray neither pity nor cruelty. With hands like aged bark, he extends his palm, awaiting payment. A single obol, a coin placed in the mouth of the deceased before burial. For those who bear no coin, the passage is denied. They must wander the riverbank for 100 years, voiceless and unseen, until mercy or memory grants them entry. Once aboard his creaking vessel, the soul is ferried across waters black as oil, where the wails of the unburied echo faintly beneath the waves. Ahead, the towering gates of the underworld rise, guarded by Cerberus, the monstrous three-headed hound. His growls rumble like thunder, his eyes burn like coals, and his purpose is absolute. None may leave the realm once entered. Beyond those gates lies a vast expanse, not chaos but order. The underworld is a kingdom, and every soul within it has a place. And before that place is decided, each must face judgment. Deep within the heart of the underworld stands the Hall of Judgment, a vast and solemn chamber lit by ghostly flames. Columns of black marble rise into shadow, and upon 3 thrones sit the judges of the dead, once mortal kings, now immortal arbiters of fate. They are Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus. Each one embodies a different aspect of justice. Their task is immense, their duty eternal, to weigh the deeds of every soul that passes through the gates, and to assign its place in the great order of eternity. The Greeks believed that no mortal, no matter how powerful, could escape this trial. Kings and peasants, heroes and cowards, all stood equal before the 3 judges. Death erases titles and crowns, it leaves only truth. The 3 judges. Rhadamanthus, once a wise ruler of Crete and brother of Minos, was famed for his unbending fairness. In death, he judges the souls of those from the east, scrutinizing every word and deed with perfect clarity. His verdicts are sharp and swift, like a blade of pure justice. Aeacus, the pious king of Aegina, was renowned for his honesty and devotion to the gods. He judges the souls of those from the west. It is said that even in life, he was so righteous that Zeus himself trusted him to guard the keys of Olympus. In the underworld, Aeacus guards the very gates of Hades, ensuring no injustice passes into eternity. And above them both presides Minos, the great king of Crete, son of Zeus and Europa. Known for his wisdom and impartiality, Minos holds the final vote, the ultimate say in a soul's fate. When the other judges disagree, his decision binds them all. His throne stands slightly higher than the rest, not in arrogance, but in recognition of his role as the final arbiter. Together, they form the divine tribunal, the silent court where every life is measured. The process of judgment was believed to be meticulous and profound. The soul's entire life would unfold before the judges, every act, every word, every secret deed revealed. No lies could conceal the truth here, no excuses could sway the verdict. The fates themselves stood witness, and the gods of justice, Dike and Nemesis, recorded every outcome. In some accounts, the soul's heart was weighed upon golden scales, not against a feather, as in Egyptian lore, but against the weight of one's own choices. Virtue and vice, courage and cowardice, mercy and cruelty, all were balanced to reveal the soul's true nature. The hall was silent as the verdict was declared, and from that moment, the soul's destiny was sealed. The Greeks believed the underworld was divided into three great regions: Elysium, Asphodel, and Tartarus, each reflecting the moral essence of those who entered. The Elysian fields, paradise of heroes. To the pure and noble, the brave and the righteous, was granted the eternal peace of Elysium, a realm bathed in golden light, where the air was forever mild and fragrant. Here, souls lived in endless joy, surrounded by music, laughter, and the company of those they loved. Elysium was not reserved for the gods, but for mortals who had lived with honor and courage, heroes like Achilles, Orpheus, and Heracles. Some legends even spoke of the Isles of the Blessed, a higher Elysium where the greatest souls were reborn thrice and rewarded with true immortality. In this paradise, time lost meaning. The sun never set, and sorrow was forgotten. The souls of Elysium wandered through meadows of perpetual spring, the reward for a life well lived. The Asphodel Meadows, the realm of the ordinary. For the vast majority of souls, neither wicked nor saintly, there awaited the Asphodel Meadows. It was a gray, twilight realm, neither joyful nor sorrowful, where the spirits of ordinary mortals wandered in quiet reflection. Here, memories of life faded slowly, like the echo of a distant dream. The souls drifted among ghostly fields of pale flowers, murmuring softly, content yet hollow. There was no punishment here, but no glory either, only eternal neutrality. To the Greeks, this was the truest mirror of humanity itself. Most lived neither heroically nor wickedly, but somewhere in between. And so, the Asphodel Meadows stretched vast and endless, filled with countless shades of lives once lived. Tartarus, the abyss of the damned. But for the truly wicked, those who had defied the gods, broken sacred oaths, or committed unforgivable crimes, there awaited Tartarus, the deepest pit of the cosmos. Even the Titans, ancient and mighty, were cast into this abyss after their defeat. Its gates were surrounded by triple walls of bronze, and the fiery river Phlegethon flowed around them like a serpent of flame. In Tartarus, the air itself burned. The cries of the condemned echoed through caverns without end. Here, punishment was eternal, not out of cruelty, but as the reflection of their deeds. Those who had lived by corruption, violence, or betrayal faced the consequences of their own actions. Yet even in this place, Hades did not take pleasure in their suffering. Tartarus was not his invention, it was the moral echo of the universe, an inevitable result of imbalance seeking correction. Though he ruled the underworld, Hades was not the judge. He presided over the system, but he did not pass sentences or wield whips. His role was far greater, to maintain the equilibrium of existence. He was the guardian of cosmic law, ensuring that justice, divine and moral, flowed as steadily as the rivers of his realm. In his eyes, every soul deserved what fate had earned, no more and no less. Hades' court was not a place of emotion, but of truth. He did not hate the wicked, nor did he favor the righteous. He watched over all, ensuring that the moral fabric of the cosmos remained intact. For him, Fairness was sacred, even when it led to suffering. And so, his realm was not hell, but harmony, a reflection of balance, where life's deeds bore their rightful fruit. To the ancient Greeks, this vision of the afterlife carried profound meaning. It taught that actions in life shaped destiny beyond death, that justice was eternal, even if unseen. Unlike later religious beliefs, the Greek afterlife was not a contest between good and evil, but a continuum of morality. It reflected not punishment for sin, but consequence for choice. Elysium rewarded virtue. Asphodel mirrored the ordinary. Tartarus answered corruption. And above all, Hades ensured that nothing escaped the weight of truth. This idea comforted the Greeks. Death was not chaos or oblivion. It was the completion of life's circle, the final judgment where every deed found its echo. The souls of the dead may have left the mortal world behind, but they remained part of the grand design. Their stories did not vanish, they became part of the rhythm that sustained all creation. The rivers flowed, the judges deliberated, Hades and Persephone ruled with calm authority. And the balance held, as it always must. Even the gods themselves could not escape this truth. Every oath sworn upon the Styx was binding because it was tied to Hades' realm, the realm of unbreakable law. For in the end, the underworld was not a place of darkness, but of justice. It was the mirror of existence, showing mortals what they had made of themselves. And in its stillness, every soul found the fate it had earned. As the centuries passed, poets and philosophers reinterpreted the tale, from Homer and Hesiod to Plato, who saw the underworld not as punishment, but purification. In death, the soul was cleansed of earthly burdens, preparing for new life. And so, the journey through Hades' realm was never truly an ending. It was a passage, a transition from one form of existence to the next. Every soul, judged and placed, became part of the great cycle, the eternal exchange between life and death, action and consequence. And standing over it all, in silent vigilance, was Hades, the guardian of balance, the keeper of truth, the god everyone feared to name. In the vast tapestry of Greek mythology, few journeys are as perilous, or as haunting, as those that lead into the underworld. For mortals, it was not merely a place of death, but a forbidden frontier between the living and the dead, where even gods tread carefully. Yet, across the ages, a handful of heroes dared to descend into that shadowed domain, facing not monsters or armies, but the very essence of mortality itself. These are their stories, the mortals who entered the realm of Hades and lived to tell the tale, or almost did. Orpheus and Eurydice, the music that moved the dead. Among all who dared to walk the path of shadows, none did so out of purer love than Orpheus, the mortal whose music could charm the trees and soften the hearts of gods. When his beloved wife, Eurydice, was taken from him by a serpent's bite, Orpheus refused to accept her fate. With nothing but his lyre and his grief, he ventured to the land no mortal should see. Through dark caverns and mist-choked tunnels he walked, his song echoing against the stones. Even the shades paused to listen. Cerberus, the monstrous three-headed guardian, lowered his heads, lulled by the melody. The ferryman Charon, usually unmoved by pleas or tears, silently rowed the mortal across the river Styx. In the deepest hall of the underworld, Orpheus stood before Hades and Persephone. He did not beg, he played. The song spoke of love so deep it transcended death, of longing that outlasted time itself. Even the cold heart of the god of the dead was stirred. Hades, who ruled without pity or cruelty, was moved, not to joy, but to remembrance. He knew loss, and he knew what it meant to be bound by the laws of the cosmos. And so he granted Orpheus a chance. Eurydice would follow him back to the world of the living, on one condition. He must not look back until both had reached the sunlight above. You know the end of that story. Just as he neared the surface, doubt crept in. He turned, and in that instant, Eurydice was gone, pulled back into the shadows forever. It wasn't cruelty that claimed her. It was the unbending nature of fate, the law that even Hades could not undo. Orpheus returned to the world above alone, and in his silence, the gods heard the echo of the underworld's most tragic love song. Heracles and the capture of Cerberus. Then came Heracles, the son of Zeus, the hero of heroes. As part of his 12 labors, the king Eurystheus commanded him to bring back Cerberus, the guardian of the underworld itself. It was a task meant to be impossible, a death sentence disguised as a challenge. Armed with his strength and courage, Heracles descended into the abyss. But even his mighty power could not force his way past Hades. Instead, the god of the dead gave him a choice. He could take Cerberus if he could do so without using a weapon. Imagine the scene. Heracles standing in the gloom before the monstrous hound. Cerberus' 3 heads snarled, dripping venom, his tail a serpent that hissed in fury. Yet Heracles did not flinch. He grappled with the beast, his arms like iron bands. They wrestled, man and monster, until Heracles subdued him through sheer will and strength. Hades watched in silence. When Heracles emerged from the underworld, leading Cerberus into the light, it was not a victory over death. It was a testament to courage. Even Hades, stern and immutable, allowed it, respecting the mortal who faced his realm without fear. Few mortals could claim such honor, to enter the kingdom of the dead and return, not by trickery but by strength and resolve. Theseus and Pirithous, the fools who challenged death. But not every descent into the underworld was born of courage or love. Some were born of arrogance. Theseus, the hero of Athens, and his companion Pirithous once made a reckless pact. Each would marry a daughter of Zeus. Theseus chose Helen, before she became the Helen of Troy, and Pirithous, in his audacity, decided that no bride was worthy of him but Persephone herself, the queen of the underworld. Together they descended into the dark realm, their hearts filled with hubris and ambition. But Hades was not fooled. He welcomed them courteously, even invited them to sit upon a stone bench while he considered their bold request. The moment they sat, their fate was sealed. The chair of forgetfulness bound them, roots of stone coiling around their flesh, fusing them to the rock. Time ceased to move for them. They became part of the underworld itself, silent reminders of mortal pride. When Heracles later descended on his own quest, he found them still there, imprisoned in agony. He managed to free Theseus, but the earth held fast to Pirithous. Some say he still sits there, waiting in eternal regret. Through their folly, mortals learned a lesson. Hades may be just, but he tolerates no arrogance before the laws of death. Odysseus and the journey to the land of the dead. Long after these heroes, another mortal dared to approach the land of the dead, not to defy it, but to seek wisdom. Odysseus, the cunning king of Ithaca, whose long voyage home from Troy was plagued by gods and monsters, sought guidance from the prophet Tiresias. Under Circe's instruction, he sailed to the western edge of the world, where the living meet the dead. There, he dug a trench, poured libations of honey, milk, and the blood of sacrifice, calling forth the shades from the underworld. From the darkness, the spirits rose. His mother, whom he had not known, was dead. His comrades from Troy, and at last, Tiresias, the blind seer, who told him what lay ahead, how to appease the gods, how to find his way home. Though Odysseus did not cross into Hades' realm itself, he stood at its threshold and gazed into eternity. In that moment, he glimpsed what all mortals fear, that death is not an end, but a mirror of life's truth. Hades did not appear, but his presence was everywhere, in the silence, the shadows, the endless reach of the unknown. These stories, of love and loss, courage and folly, paint Hades not as a monster, but as a constant force. He does not chase mortals or crave their souls. They come to him, as all must, and his realm reflects the choices they made in life. When Orpheus sang, Hades listened. When Heracles fought, he allowed. When Theseus sinned, he judged. And when Odysseus sought, he remained silent, because truth needs no words. Through every descent, mortals encountered the same truth. The underworld is not a place of horror, but of reckoning. It is the shadow that gives light its meaning. And Hades, seated upon his silent throne beside Persephone, is not a tyrant, but a keeper of balance, calm, enduring, and eternal. The gates of the underworld do not close in malice, they close in order. Because every soul must find its place. And in that place, Hades waits, not as the destroyer, but as the one who ensures that even death obeys the laws of the cosmos. In the grand pantheon of Greek mythology, every god had their emblems, signs that told of their nature, their power, and their dominion. Zeus wielded thunder, Poseidon the trident, Athena the owl and spear. But Hades, the unseen one, bore symbols darker, subtler, and far more profound. His were not meant to dazzle or inspire fear through spectacle, but to remind mortals of the quiet inevitability that awaited all living things. His imagery was the language of the unseen, the hush after life, the stillness of the soil, and the shimmer of gold hidden beneath the earth. Each of his symbols tells a story. Each reflects not cruelty, but cosmic balance. The Helm of Darkness, the gift of the Cyclops. Long before Hades became the ruler of the underworld, he was a warrior in the most ancient of divine wars, the Titanomachy, the great clash between the old gods and the new. When Zeus freed the Cyclops from their prison in Tartarus, they crafted gifts for each of the three brothers as a sign of their allegiance. For Zeus, they forged the thunderbolt, the weapon of kingship and dominion over the skies. For Poseidon, they made the trident, the emblem of storms and the depths. And for Hades, they crafted something unlike any weapon, the Helm of Darkness, also known as the Cap of Invisibility. This helm was no mere ornament. It granted its wearer the power to vanish entirely from sight, not through illusion, but by removing their presence from the awareness of gods and mortals alike. To wear it was to step beyond existence, to become truly unseen. During the Titanomachy, Hades used it to move through shadows unseen, striking fear into the ancient titans who could not perceive where their doom came from. Yet even after the war, the helm remained a symbol not of deceit or cowardice, but of Hades' essential nature, the unseen power that moves silently through the world, shaping destiny from the depths. In the hands of Hades, invisibility was not an escape, it was mastery over perception itself. Just as death comes unseen and unannounced, so too did the god who ruled it. The Greeks believed that to invoke the Helm of Darkness was to acknowledge that some forces are beyond the eye, yet forever present. Even later heroes who borrowed the helm, like Perseus, in his quest to slay Medusa, carried with them the echo of Hades' dominion. For every act of concealment, every victory won unseen, was a shadow of his gift. The bident, symbol of balance and authority. While Zeus ruled the heavens with his thunderbolt and Poseidon commanded the seas with his trident, Hades wielded a bident, a two-pronged staff, forged not for conquest, but for governance. Its twin points represented a dual truth, life and death, darkness and light, ending and renewal. Where his brothers struck and shattered, Hades' symbol divided with precision, never to destroy, but to separate the realms, to define boundaries that even gods could not cross. In some depictions, the bident glows with an inner light, not of flame, but of smoldering embers, a reflection of the fires of the underworld that purify, not merely burn. It was the scepter of a judge, not a tyrant. Through it, Hades maintained balance, the unspoken law that for every beginning, there must be an end. The Greeks saw the bident as the perfect emblem of duality. It did not pierce like a sword, nor shatter like a hammer, it simply divided, drawing the invisible line between existence and oblivion. Where Zeus reigned through command and Poseidon through tempest, Hades ruled through inevitability. The bident, therefore, was not an object of violence but of cosmic balance. Cerberus, the guardian of boundaries. No symbol of Hades is as vivid, or as feared, as Cerberus, the monstrous three-headed hound who guards the gates of the underworld. Born from Echidna and Typhon, creatures of chaos, Cerberus was gifted to Hades not as a weapon, but as a guardian of order. Each of his heads was said to represent a stage of existence, past, present, and future. His three mouths barked not in rage, but in warning, to mortals who would trespass where they did not belong, and to spirits who sought to flee the destiny already sealed for them. Cerberus is loyalty incarnate. Unlike the monsters slain by heroes, he is never truly defeated. Even Heracles, who once dragged him into the light, did so with Hades' consent. The god permitted it, not as a humiliation, but as a lesson. Cerberus cannot be conquered, he can only be respected. The Greeks saw him not merely as a beast, but as the manifestation of boundary, the faithful sentinel between two worlds. To encounter Cerberus was to face the threshold of mortality itself. And like death, he is both terrifying and necessary. The keys of the underworld, mastery of passage and fate. Among the lesser-known emblems of Hades are his keys, ancient, heavy, and often wrought of black iron or gold. They were not literal keys to gates, but symbolic of his sovereignty over the boundaries of life and death. In many ancient hymns and texts, Hades is called Klymenos, the renowned, and Eubuleus, the good counselor, titles that reflect wisdom and authority. The keys, held always at his side, represent that dominion, not as ownership of souls, but as stewardship. No one entered or left his realm without his consent. Even gods, when they sought the release of a mortal soul, had to bargain with him. To the Greeks, the keys of Hades symbolized control over transition, the crossing from one state of being to another. Birth, death, decay, and rebirth, all were bound by his unseen authority. It was not power in the sense of command, but in the sense of permanence. He did not decide fate, he kept its doors. The ancient Orphic rites even depicted Hades handing these keys to Persephone, signifying that both king and queen ruled together, ensuring that the gates of life and death remained in balance. The palette of Hades, beauty in shadow. When the ancients spoke of Hades' domain, they did not imagine endless blackness, but a realm of depth and quiet beauty, a place of mystery illuminated by its own glow. His color palette was not merely dark, it was black, obsidian, and gold. Black symbolized the fertile earth, the womb from which all things are born and to which all things return. Obsidian, sharp and glimmering, reflected the purity of truth, nothing hidden, nothing false. And gold, the most sacred of metals, embodied the wealth buried beneath the soil, the hidden beauty of things unseen. Hades was often depicted wearing garments woven from the night itself, trimmed in gold that shimmered faintly like the veins of ore in rock. His throne was said to be carved from black basalt, but its arms gleamed with veins of electrum, reminding all who saw it that even in darkness, light is born. To artists and philosophers alike, Hades' palette became a metaphor. True value lies beneath the surface. Just as the treasures of the earth are hidden deep below, so too are wisdom and truth found only through descent, through introspection, through loss, through silence. The unseen power, essence of Hades' symbols. Every symbol of Hades shares a single essence, the unseen, the inevitable, and the balanced. His helm hides, his bident divides, his keys control, and his colors concealed treasures beneath shadow. Even Cerberus, his loyal guardian, embodies restraint and order, not savagery. These are not symbols of fear, they are emblems of understanding. Through them, the Greeks learned that death was not an act of vengeance, but a necessary rhythm. Every harvest required the seed to die before new life could bloom. Every hero's glory ended in stillness, giving rise to legend. In Hades' hands, these symbols are more than divine tools. They are reflections of the cosmic truth that all things must end to begin again. He does not roar like Zeus, nor rage like Poseidon. He whispers, in the silence beneath the world, where gold sleeps in stone and time forgets itself. And in that silence, his symbols endure, unchanging, eternal, unseen. In the end, Hades stands not as a villain, nor as a savior, but as the quiet keeper of the cycle that binds all existence. He does not crave worship, nor demand adoration. He simply is, the constant beneath the shifting world above. To the living, his name inspired fear. Yet to those who truly understood, it was not fear, but respect, for Hades represents what every mortal must face. The truth that all things return to the earth, and from the earth, all things rise again. His realm is not one of despair, but of order. His darkness is not void, but balance. And his silence? It is not absence, it is eternity listening. For in every seed buried in the soil, Hades watches rebirth. In every shadow cast by the sun, he reminds us that light and darkness are not enemies. They are partners in the endless dance of creation. So when you hear his name whispered in myth, remember this: Hades was never the god of death. He was the guardian of life's second half, the one who keeps the world turning when no one else is watching. If you've journeyed this far into the underworld and returned with your soul intact, then you've just witnessed one of mythology's most misunderstood gods in a new light. But this is only one gate. The world of myths holds countless others waiting to be opened. From the glory of Olympus to the chaos of Tartarus, each tale hides truths about us, the living. So if you want to keep exploring the mysteries of gods, monsters, and forgotten realms, hit that like button, subscribe to Kata Dunia, and ring the bell, so you'll never miss the next story that drags you beyond the veil of the ordinary. Because here, every legend lives again. And remember, the next time the earth trembles, or the night grows silent, It might just be the unseen king of shadows, watching, waiting, reminding you that nothing ever truly ends.